Hello, fantasy baseball fans. I'm Paul Williamson. This is Fantasy MLB Today, a Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. As always, it's an honor and a privilege to give y'all this podcast, give y'all information, advice to help you win your leagues, give your teams a boost. Before we get into the conversation for today, where we got Ben Tidd on talking outfielders, I remind you to follow me on Twitter at PaulW_34 to get more of me. Ask me questions, hit me up. Let's get ready for 2026. Same thing on Bluesky with no underscore. That's at PaulW34 there. I'm also at the Sports Ethos Fantasy Baseball accounts at Ethos Fantasy BB on Twitter, at Ethos Fantasy MLB on Bluesky. We get updates, all of our in-season and draft guide content. We're packing that up every single day with articles and information to help you win. So make sure you check out sportsethos.com to get down on that action. And one last ask, please rate and subscribe to the podcast. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast, both where you get your podcast and on YouTube, where my Wednesday podcast will be on. So make sure you subscribe to the Sports Ethos YouTube channel. All right. So with all that out of the way, let's bring in our guest, Ben Tidd, former Sports Ethos writer. You enjoyed his tidbits for quite some time, and he is the third place NFBC main event champion in 2022. You can follow him on Twitter or X at BreakingBen_10 or T rather, BreakingBen_T. And then you're on the Bench with Bubba podcast, and you can find his content as part of the Bubba and the Bloom draft kit over at the Bubba and the Bloom. So Ben, man, how are you doing, dude? Anything else you want to talk about where the people can find you?
No, Paul. Well, first, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's my second time on the show. I was on with Joe, I think, back when I was writing for you guys in 2024. I think that was. So it's been a little bit, but it's good to be back on. So I appreciate you reaching out. And yeah, you basically got it all there. I'm not always on with Bubba. Typically in season, I'll be on every week. Definitely with the Fab reviews that we do. We cover OC Fab. Even though I don't play in the OC, it's very similar though. 15
Yeah.
to 12. It's easy to go down. I think more so than going up. And yeah, you mentioned the draft kit. So Bubba and Ryan Bloomfield, they have their Patreon, and they've been kind to ask me and Martin Sokolsky as well to help contribute to the draft kit. So I have a couple of written things over there, and it's I'll do a little plug for them if you don't mind. It's the draft kit's $20, I believe. It's essentially the thinking was you save $1 by not being a subscriber for 3 months. So if anyone is not a member of the Patreon, I'd recommend highly going over there to the Patreon. It's a great group of guys and girls in the Discord, always talking baseball, and it's my go-to news source now. So it's a great community to join.
Oh yeah, right on, man. Yeah, a lot of good names there, man. A lot of guys have a lot of respect for. So very much a worthwhile take a look over there. Ben, let's get to know you a little bit, man. How did you get into baseball, and then how did you get into fantasy baseball?
Yeah, so you asked put on the rundown about me in the baseball, and as far as I can remember, I've always loved it. Probably, when I was 5 years old, my dad got me into it, and I was one of those kids. I've always liked math, kind of ties in with my fantasy baseball love as well. And I remember I was looking at like stat books of all the old players and like just memorizing who's in the Hall of Fame. So I've been a huge fan of baseball most of my life now, and when I got into fantasy baseball, I think it goes back to 2006. So I saw my Yahoo profile, and it tracks when you first joined, whether it's football, basketball, baseball. I think it says '06. So I was a freshman in high school when I first tried fantasy baseball out, and I've been playing every year since. So it's one of my major passions.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And what's intriguing for me is I've always been a baseball fan. Same thing as you. My dad got me into it. I grew up in the Astrodome watching a lot of '90s Astros baseball. And what was interesting for me though is that I kind of hate math. I kind of hate numbers, and so fantasy baseball is it's a world in which I've always had an interest in because I love baseball. And now that I'm thinking about it, my dad, whenever I was real young, kind of pointed me, even for the '90s kind of advanced thought here that wins didn't really matter. Batting average was kind of overrated. On base percentage was more important, and things like that. That kind of aspect of like finding things beneath the surface to try to explain why certain things happen. Because baseball, what I always liked about it is how unpredictable it is, and so finding ways to predict it has always interested me. And so fantasy baseball is kind of one outlet for me to do that. And so it's and then of course playing video games, I always did the franchise mode. I don't know if you did franchise mode for like MLB The Show and stuff like that, but I was the dude that would draft teams and then never play a game. I would just simulate and do signings and trades and stuff like that. So, so that's so roster building and my love for trying to understand and predict baseball is why I love fantasy baseball so much. Did you play this franchise modes growing up?
I did. I remember I would when I was really young, first getting into it, I kinda stayed with the Yankees team, and then I would trade for random guys I remember seeing play versus the
Hmm.
Yankees. But I I I would always do, so my favorite game I think of all time was MVP '05, and I used to love doing I forget what it was called, but basically, like, you can build your own stadium, and then I would do a draft with that as well. So I used to love that, that was even before I started doing fantasy. So yeah, it's always been that
Okay,
whole aspect has been a big, thing I've
the
been
MVP '05
doing.
game was because there was one random one that Jeff Bagwell was the cover. Was that it?
No, so '05 was Pujols, I think.
Okay, so maybe it was like an '03
Or
one.
may
I remember there was one. It was Bagwell, and it was the red jersey. Was so it was kind of later in his career. And I remember when it came out, I was like, Bagwell, like, like that would have made sense in the '90s, but like this was kind of toward the back end, so it was very
Yeah,
random for me, but super cool. So I wanted it. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but maybe it was like an '03, '04 one or something like that. But yeah, man. So it's just all those things that's transition for me, and it's one of those things where I can stare at a different kind of screen and and still love baseball and seem like I'm productive of being an adult about it. So it's pretty cool.
for sure.
Yeah, man. All right. So before we get into the outfield conversation, we got some spring training news and notes to go over. So including one thing that dropped today. We're recording here on a Tuesday in the afternoon around 6:30. First up is the Spencer Strider velo stuff. Is kind of I've seen a lot of discussion on social media on it. It's down, but there's a report that came out that he doesn't care about velocity right now. It's all about the shape, which I think tracks. I think that makes sense, but I think a lot of people are kind of worried about it. What are your thoughts on Spencer Strider, given this new information, kind of new information ish, I guess, and what his value is for next season?
Well, I've really been out on Strider all draft season so far. Haven't taken him anywhere. I think I have him below where ADP has been. And I
Mhm.
recall hearing on, I think it was on the CBS podcast, they mentioned how his IVB, which is something I don't normally care about at all, was kind of in line with past when he was better for Strider. But I don't know. He's a two pitch pitcher, and if his velocity's down on his fastball, I'm gonna definitely stay away. So, yeah, this is I'm not. There could be some merit to it that he's actually like just trying to work on stuff in spring training, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But I need to see him throwing like 98 again before I would want to draft him.
And for me, I think my biggest issue with what's being reported so far is not that his velo's down. I thought that was kind of a given. I was hoping the Braves would work with him on adding like another pitch. Like Woodruff at least now had the cutter he's working with, so he understood the fact that his injury is going to impact his velo, and so he had to do something. And so I was kind of hoping he'd come to camp saying, "Oh, I'm working on a sinker or like a curveball or I don't know something different to add to his pitch mix." I'm not a pitch mix guru, so like I'm not too sure what would be the best one. But the Braves are, in my opinion, are a pretty good pitching development organization to getting the best out of what they have. And the fact that I haven't really seen a whole lot of him trying to get away from that two pitch approach is the most worrisome to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think they have Mike Maddox now as a pitching coach, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, so you think he would kinda do something along those lines too, so I guess we'll see. I mean, with only 3 weeks till the season starts, so there's not a whole lot of time for him to show
yeah.
something off.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. The next bit of news here is Corbin Carroll and Francisco Lindor, the Hamate brothers, I guess you want to call them. They're both making these statements that they're ready, going to be ready for opening day, or they think they will be, they hope they will be. How far are you fading them, or are you fading them at all in the drafts right now?
Alright, so I don't think I've been in a draft in the first round since the news came out on either one of them. I haven't moved either one down in my overall rankings. I have So I have a couple weeks till my next draft comes around, and I don't know. I'd rather stay away. I've said, and I think like right through others and like whether it's the Discord, or whatever. But it's hard for me to quantify how much to knock the both of them down because I'm concerned with the power with when I hear handmade. I'm always concerned with the power. I think that's the common or the main consensus among fantasy baseball players, and so. I'd be less concerned with Carroll because he's had those years of like 20 homers, 50 steals, so he could still be very valuable if he's not hitting 30 homers again. Whereas Lindor, he's kind of got a you expect 30-30 from him, so I'd probably prefer Carroll to Lindor if I had to pick one or the other, but you don't have to win your league by drafting either one. You could end up getting a great value if the power does come back and you get them in the second round for like Carroll, maybe end of the second or I guess mid third, like in the 12th for Lindor. But I don't know if I want to risk that necessarily. I'll have to see what happens in their spring games before I draft again.
Yeah, for me, third round is about where I was thinking with them, but the fact that the ADP hasn't dropped to the third round yet, so for me, I'm out. I maybe I'd be more interested if whenever I start to get to my standard 12 team drafts, where you can take a little more risk because the waiver wire will be a little bit more fruitful for you, so you can take a little more risk. So maybe like back in second round in one of those leagues when I start drafting there, I can maybe take, especially at that point we'll have more information on the injury. But for right now, I'm waiting. They can say, "Oh, I'm working out and getting ready." Well, so is everyone else. So like, what's it's they're saying they're hopeful, but they're being real picky with their words, and so they're not being like, "Yeah, absolutely 100% ready." It's I'm hopeful. My gut feeling says, and that's like for a first round, second round pick, I need more than a gut feeling here, man. I need to know. And so I don't want to draft them when they're out. And then it's going to take them a month or two to get to their power because, as you mentioned, the hamate injury can be difficult to get over from a power perspective. So right now I'm out. Maybe in a couple of weeks, if we start to get better news, more clear news, I might be more in. But for right now, I am out. Anything else before we move on to the next batch, the next news item?
Yeah, the last thing I was as I kind of got burned by Gunnar Henderson last year, different injury, but I was still taking him in the first round when he had the oblique, and he didn't have an awful year, but it wasn't the first round for the year. So, and also I've taken Lindor on two DCs already, draft champions, draft and hold. So I'm kind of done with Lindor, I think. So that's why I'd be more willing to take Carroll, I think, because I don't have him yet. But I
Right.
prefer somebody else probably.
Yeah, Gunnar hurt me too in a couple of leagues last year. That kind of sucked. I mean, at least he stole 32 bases. That was kind of cool.
Right.
But overall, you're hoping for those bat power to come around with where you drafted him at. Anyways, the next batch of news here is Michael Bush being reported to not be a platoon. Which was kind of my only concern, given his draft price and the potential. At the end of the year last year, we did see him start getting benched against lefties. So are you buying the Michael Bush platoon or not being a platoon, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this one's tricky. So one of the things I do in my prep is I look at percentage of plate appearances versus righties and lefties, and I believe Michael Bush had a high enough percentage versus righties where righties took up the highest percentage of his plate appearances where he was in a platoon in my mind. I think he had 84% of his plate appearances last year were versus right-handed pitching, and my threshold that I've kind of developed by looking at the data is like 80%. Anything below 80, you're probably full-time. Anything above 80, you're in a platoon. But that was last year, and I guess with Tyler Austin getting hurt, which he seemed like he was the likely platoon partner with Bush if there was gonna be one. Um, he's gone for, like, months now. Looking at their bench on roster resource, there's Matt Shaw, Miguel Amaya, but then Ballesteros, I don't know if he'll play first, he's a lefty anyway too, so I don't know. I haven't taken Bush yet. I've either gone earlier with first base or I've waited till after that range. Um, but I don't know. It's tough. There's still doubt in my mind that he would be full time. So I'd rather, and I don't want to take a platoon bat that early. So I don't really want to risk it either. Even though like his underlying numbers were great last year. Bush's awesome barrel rate,
Mhm.
a hard hit, all the power metrics were great for him. So he's been in a void for me, not because I don't think he's good. It's just that I'd rather have a little more certain full time playing time at that point, and I'm not gonna buy it yet till I see it. I don't think.
Yeah, because first base is one of those positions where if I don't get a top dog at the very beginning of the draft, if someone like I think I took Matt Olson in my draft and hold just because I like the safety there. But generally, first base is a position I'm kind of waiting on anyway, so that's why I haven't drafted Bush. In terms of the platoon, if I remember correctly, when I did the blurb on this, he had a number of home runs. I want to say it was something like 4 homers and 100 plate appearances, something like that. That if you extrapolate it out to 600, he was around 24, 25 homers on the season, which kind of makes him like a poor man's Joey Gallo against lefties. And in my opinion, if he's at least that, at least has a serviceable power bat with I don't think he gets enough walks one way or the other, anyways, for it to be a bigger impact here. So for me, as long as the power can be there against lefties, then he makes it a little more palatable. And also makes me hope that, especially he's a good defender too, and so it's hard for him to put that on the bench. A good bat or a good potential power bat and a good plus defender also kind of helps solidify him, but at the end of the day, the platoon risk is a risk. They did platoon him toward the end of last year, so they've shown a propensity to do it. And at that draft price, I don't think I could draft that, especially considering the overall depth. I guess the price is okay in a daily change league. Maybe if you can get some first base corner infield depth later in the draft, but it would be difficult for me to draft him, especially considering what's after him and the risk that's involved. So, yeah, no, absolutely, man. Any more thoughts on the platoon before we move on to Jordan Alvarez?
I have to say that him batting leadoff will offset some of the lack of
Mhm.
if he does platoon, it'll offset some, but you could like, if you're playing NFBC like I primarily do, where you have, semi-weekly lineup settings, if you have, like, a
Mhm.
Monday through Thursday where there's 3 games for the Cubs and 2 are versus lefties, maybe you get 1 game out of Bush if he actually is platooning, so even batting first won't really help that much, unless I think he may pinch hit, but just another something to consider where it's not as bad as if he's in, like, 4th or 5th for the Cubs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, I had a couple of shares of Bush because he started out slow and there were some drops that I was able to take advantage of. But I had, I want to say, um, Ryan O'Hearn, I think, also in some of those leagues. So I was able to interchange them from day to day or week to week, depending on the week. And so, if you can get that assurance, if you can get that depth that he's more palatable, and I can see it. It's not
Mhm.
the worst thing in the world. Um,
Right.
so yeah, moving on. Jordan Alvarez making his spring debut. I believe he went over through with a couple of strikeouts, but the fact that he was out there in game action is encouraging, especially since the Astros have a tendency to push these things back and leave us in the dark. But seeing him on the field is about the most sure thing you can get. Does this help you draft Alvarez easier, or are you a fade on him? What are your thoughts?
I think I have Alvarez on 1 team so far, one of my 8 teams. And the only really the thing that hurts the most is that he's U2 only, at least in NFBC. I think Yahoo's probably got
Mhm.
outfield still. Other sites he might be outfield eligible still, which he would be much more appealing to me in those formats. But as a U2 only guy, I'm still relatively interested because I remember doing on one of the shows I did with Bubba late last season. We were doing like a second half risers type show, and Jordan had I think he had the second or third highest xWOBA amongst everyone
Mhm.
in the second half, and he just was crushing the ball, and I think it kinda went on the radar because he was hurt so often last year, then he ended the season hurt, but after the slow start for Jordan, he ended up being just as good as he was, so, it's good to see him playing, and I'm not worried about the results in the spring as long as there's, like, no day-to-day hand injuries, knee injuries, his ankle doesn't
Mhm.
act up. I think where he's been going, he's gonna be a target for me still going forward.
Yeah, and that ankle injury was fluky, right? He crossed
Right.
home plate and twisted his ankle. So, I don't know if we can't call that like a chronic thing for him. There's other injury issues, but the ankle one specifically is not. And overall, man, his those Statcast numbers were all there for him. Even after he came back from the initial injury, there was a small sample there right after the first injury and before the ankle happened that he was crushing the ball, man. He was Jordan again. And then the ankle thing happened. So I'm fairly confident in the overall health from the non-ankle injuries. That I think that he is a buy. There is a report circulating that the Astros could be considering him in the outfield, which they might be forced to do if they're not going to put Altuve out there, because if they're not going to trade Paredes, well, he's got to play more. And the only way you can do that is if you put Jordan in the outfield, open up the DH spot, or bench Correa or bench Walker or bench Pena, and I don't think those are things that you want to do. So, it would make sense if Paredes is still on the thing, which means on the roster, which means that Jordan could get outfield eligibility come May or so, and so that's going to be that's another thing to think about when it comes to Jordan. I'm definitely in on him.
Agree with all that.
Yes, sir. Bryce Miller have a precautionary PRP shot. That's an interesting way to put it from the Mariners here. From new information on his side. Anybody who follows me on Twitter posted this the other day. I was already kind of out on Miller, and now I'm even more out. I don't know how you feel about this, but two PRP shots. Dealing with bone spurs already, plus this. I'm out. What are your thoughts on Miller?
Yeah, I don't have a lot much more to add than what you said, Paul. I haven't drafted Miller yet. I have him kind of ranked co competitively based on his ADP, but I have not had any desire to click draft on next to his name so far, so it'll probably stay that way for me as well.
Yeah, I even had an opportunity to buy him low in a dynasty league, and I passed up on it. I was like, even a buy low in dynasty doesn't sound too awesome right now because bone spurs without surgery is a difficult proposition for me to buy into. It just kind of feels like it's kind of a ticking time bomb. One of those bone spurs goes the wrong way, and you're done. So, yeah, no, I'm not out, not in on that one. And then the news that dropped today, Jerkson Profar. Here we go again. Tested positive or supposedly tested positive. I guess they're appealing it now. So allegedly tested positive for performance enhancers, facing a full season suspension. Man, I don't know if Profar's going to play in the league again if this doesn't get overturned. And then in terms of fantasy, what are the applications here? Anybody get a bump for you?
Yeah, this was a topic in the Bubble Boom Discord today, and I was looking at roster resource right after the news came out, and I don't know. So right now they have Dominic Smith as the DH for the
Mhm.
Braves, and I don't know if the Braves are going to want to keep that. And I was trying to think of who's available, and there's not too many guys I think that are unsigned on hitter wise. One that comes to mind, I don't know why, is Andrew McCutcheon. I know he's still available, but yeah, I don't know if there's any prospects either that the Braves could call up. I know they have a handful of good pitching prospects, but I'm not sure about hitting prospects. I guess maybe, and this makes the most sense, is that once Sean Murphy is healthy, he and um, Drake Baldwin could end up being full time between DH and catcher, which would definitely be good for Baldwin, and it'd probably make Murphy relevant again, as long as you think he's good, because Murphy's been pretty bad last couple of years, and I've kind of been completely out on him, even in DC. So not a whole lot to do yet. If you've drafted already and you have Profar, hopefully it gets overturned for your sake. But yeah, to your point, I think he could be done if this actually does stick.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, there's a lot of talk about how like, oh, well, the skills are still there even after the drug test. And then, well, now we find out why the skills are still there.
Yeah.
It's like, damn it, really, man? Like, come on. Yeah, I love the Baldwin take. I tweeted that out earlier. Just, that's a big one for me because the reason why I don't have Baldwin ranked higher is because I'm afraid that Sean Murphy's going to come back. And, at that time, Profar was listed as the DH with the outfield full. And I didn't think they're going to take away from Profar in order to get Baldwin more ABs. And so I was like, man, when Murphy comes back, what's going to happen to Baldwin? But now with Profar out of the way, I think I'm probably going to bump up Baldwin. I'm probably going to be a little more aggressive in drafting him because I love him. I really do. I was just afraid of the playing time. It's the only concern I had. And now, unless they don't make a move, right? Like they can still go out and I know McCutcheon's still serviceable. He's not bad. So that's a possibility for them. Someone mentioned on Twitter that Paredes might now be a suitor for the Braves, or the actual to be a suitor for the Braves with getting Paredes over there. I don't know what kind of trade would look like, but I would hope they would get some type of I don't know what outfielder they would have that would help us out. That's off the top of my head. But if I don't know what they would, I don't know if they could afford an outfielder right now, anyways. So I very much, hope that Baldwin gets the big bump here. I hope they don't make any extra moves. Any more on the Profar situation before we move on?
Nope, I'm all set.
Right on, man. So on the last podcast, Nathan Baker broke down the top 40 outfielders by ADP, and this is the ADP based on online championship starting on February 1st on the NFBC. So effectively, Nathan took care of the standard league outfield options, a 12-team, three outfield setups, those starting options there, and then we'll start to get into the starters for five outfield options and deeper. So we'll begin with the first tier of names here. We're going to begin with outfielders 41 through 50, beginning with Alec Burleson, Mike Trout, Ian Happ, uh, no longer Profar, Dalen Lyle, Brian Reynolds, Caballero, Varsho, Caglione, Barger. Ben, give us your one target here.
Yeah, so I'm glad I didn't pick Profar, so that's good. And
Yeah.
I'll generally say that there's a lot of good targets in this range that I've drafted so far, so it's a good range to shop for outfield, especially in a deeper league.
Yes.
Uh, but
Mhm.
so I went with Ian Happ as my target in this range, and I think I have Happ rated or ranked in my personal rankings. He's like around I'm at 148, so significantly ahead of where his ADP is, and this is even true for
Mhm.
DCs. He's going in the similar range in the 15-team draft and hold format versus the 12-team OC, which is Fab. So it's kind of interesting that I feel like he should at least be higher in the draft and hold because of how consistent Hap has been the last few years. I think his stat line is he's not quite the Chris Davis with a K who used to hit 247 every year, but Ian Happ has basically returned his value compared to what he was at last year. So I pulled it up earlier. His ADP in the main event, which is like I focus my ADP on when it comes to Fab leagues. Last year, Happ was at 139, and he did exactly what you're hoping for. So his drop in ADP doesn't really make sense to me. So he's been a great target. If your average is fine, he makes more sense because Hap's more like a 240 hitter. It seems like lately he's hitting the 240s last 3 seasons, but he's good for almost 90 runs. He's gonna hit the top of the Cubs lineup, at least 80 RBIs. He will steal some. He didn't have double digits last year in 2025 Hap, but he had 14 and 13 the previous 2 seasons. Low to mid 20s homers, and at that spot, especially where I come from with like 15-team mindset. Those are just bankable stats that are so valuable at that point in the draft. So he's an easy draft for me.
Yeah, man, and I was ecstatic to get him at my NFBC 50. When I saw that he was there still, like, oh, bet I think it was on pick like 120 or something like that, and so I could not hit draft quicker. And even in a non NFBC, even in a non draft and hold, he's a great value because, like you said, it's going to get steady Eddie production. It's always going to be something that you want. And so I definitely like Ian Happ. I have him ranked above ADP as well in the Williamson 300. So I've got no pushback on Hap. My target here in this range is Brian Reynolds. Man, people, I guess, just forgot how really good Brian Reynolds once was. If you go back on the player rater in 2023 and 2024, he was a top, 25 or so outfielder in both of those campaigns. And if you go and take a look at his under the hood numbers from last year, there's really no major drop off. There's really no concern there. So he just got a little unlucky in the first half last year. The second half, he was pretty much Brian Reynolds. The numbers are really good. And it just makes sense. You look at what the data was, during the slump. Well, they were pretty solid. It was just a matter of time. We did a buy and sell podcast in the middle of last year, and he was one of my buy lows because it was just a matter of time before we figured it out. He did in the second half. The numbers were real good. And this is probably the best Pirate lineup that he's been a part of since he's been in Pittsburgh. And so he's probably aligned for his best counting stats he's ever had because he's actually going to have some semi competent batters batting around him. And so I am all in on Brian Reynolds. I feel like I'm going to end up with a lot of him in these 12-team leagues because he's going to be so cheap and the upside is there. Yeah, what are your thoughts on Mr. Reynolds?
That's a great choice that you made, Paul. He's someone I would have considered as well for my target, but I have him ranked Reynolds a little bit more closer to ADP, so that's why I went with Hap. But yeah, Reynolds was as consistent as possible the prior 4 seasons, and he has one bad year, and yeah, the drop is a little extreme in the ADP, but to your point, it's a good opportunity to get some nice value.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Who is your fade at this part of the draft?
Yeah, so when I was looking at the OC ADP, because like I said, I'm not in tune with the 12-team ADP right now. I was surprised to see how high Trout is going in that format. I think he's going like post 200 in DCs. At least that's where I have him ranked. And Trout's going like 180, I think is what it was, which is much higher than I'm willing to take him. Uh, the K rate has gotten really bad with Trout. I think he was at or above 30% in the K rate department. He was at 32%, which that's bad. That's and for someone as good as Trout, I think I don't know if it's injuries, he's just selling out to try to keep the power going. And because of that, his XBA was 236. So it's not so there's it's going to be hard to maintain a decent average when you're striking out that often. And obviously the injuries they're so crippling with him. And he kind of played last year finally for like a semi full year, and the stat line wasn't even that good for Trout really. So um, maybe I get like there's that upside appeal in a 12 teamer with Trout, but especially in my drafting holds, I want nothing to do with him. There was one point I debated drafting him, and I'm like, I can't do it. And then when it comes to my 15 team fab leagues, uh, you kind of need some more security in those as well. And I'll probably just go for someone later in the draft or just take a different outfit at that point. I just don't, which is sad to say. I don't think I've ever drafted Trout in my life because I never had like the first pick all those years when he was going first overall. But I just can't do it now. I think he's a shell, a pretty hollow shell of what he used to be.
Yeah, and this talk of him saying he's going to play center field again. He's claiming that it's easier on his knees, it's less running. Now there's some posts going around social media saying he's going to try and get up to. He was clocked at like 29 something feet per second. He says he's going to get to 30. And in my mind, I'm like, bro, calm down. Let's kind of preserve these knees here, man. Like because that's been the problem. I feel like he should have taken a Grant Hill type pivot with his career, saying, "All right, I'm going to just focus on hitting. His best asset right now for the Angels is staying healthy and being in the batter's box." And if he would have done that, I might be a little more in on him. Of him to say, if he were to start to kind of do the right thing, say, you know what, DH only. I'm going to take it easy. I'm not going to try to be, 30 steal guy. I'm not going to try to be the guy who once was. I'm going to be the guy that my team needs me to be. But he's not doing that. He's no, hey, you know what? He's not. He wants to be who he once was. And my God, if that happens this year, then hats off to the people that drafted him. Kudos, you'll probably win. But I can't take that risk. I just can't. There's too much actual actual production available where he's being drafted for me to take him. It's not like he's going in like the dart throw range. He's not going the lottery ticket range. He's going a range of guys that you can get some real value. So I can't take him either. That strikeout rate scares me too much. He might be Joey Gallo next year, bat 200 with 30 homers. I don't know if I want that. If you're taking Trout, you better take a lot of batting average assets around him to Bowie him because it's a big risk. So yeah. Any more on Trout before I move on to my fade here?
Nope, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, no. And for my fade, I kind of took a cop out, but you mentioned earlier how much I love this range. I really do. I don't think you can really go wrong outside of Trout and then Jose Caballero, who's my fade here, simply because he's just a team specific player. You draft him if you need steals and steals alone. I can't trust him much else. I can't trust him to be an everyday player. I can't trust him to give me anything other than steals when he actually plays. Volpe is someone who's saying he could be back as soon as April. Caballero is someone who's probably going to be a nice sell high whenever he gets close to being the end of his run as the everyday shortstop. So once Volpe comes back, unless like Brian McMahon is just a total crapshoot, which I guess is possible. It's hard for me to see an everyday path to playing time for Caballero. He's going to have his spurts, but he's not someone I can roster. He's not someone I can hold on to. So he's a stream to start out. Probably a drop when Volpe comes back in, especially in 12 teamers. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Caballero?
Yeah, I strongly considered picking Caballero as my fade as well. So, and I'm a Yankee fan, so no bias from me. It's just yeah, like you mentioned, the reports on Volpe are coming in relatively positively, that he's gonna be back ahead of his schedule. So that's really what's keeping Caballero in the projected lineup right now, and the only thing you could argue that's in his favor is that the Yankees are so lefty heavy that when Volpe does come back, they would maybe wanna keep a right-handed bat in the lineup, but Caballero doesn't have any power. His value is just really stealing. He's a great and he can play all over the field, so he's a great utility guy to have. And I think
Yeah.
he's just filling the gap while Volpe's out. And unless McMahon, like you said, unless McMahon tanks or someone else gets hurt, which is very possible with the way the Yankees lineup is looking with Stanton predominantly in the middle of it. You never know, like his elbow's already shot or still shot. They never really healed apparently. But yeah, Caballero is he's just a rabbit, and I'd rather take someone else in past later than this range. Honestly, I like we'll talk about some of our targets that are going later in the show, and I'd much rather draft them at their price than taking Caballero right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I just can't do it, man. Like if you were going further down where he's like a bench piece option, like not someone I have to start, but someone I can just put on my bench and plug in whenever I know he's going to get playing time that week, or if I'm hope, or even better, if I'm in a daily change league, then I can see him being a depth piece option there on my bench, but not someone I'm plugging in my starting lineup. I can't draft him like that. So all right. So going on to outfielders 51 through 60. We've got some interesting names again here for me, anyway. Sal Frelick, Willier Abreu, Heliot Ramos, Ramon Laureano, Adolis Garcia, Jordan Beck, Gary Carpenter, Mickey Moniak, John Carlos Stanton, and Trent Grisham, sorry. So, Ben, give us your target in this range.
Yeah, not a bad range again, like just like the last time we covered. But for this one, I went with Elliot Ramos. I have him like 40 spots ahead of his ADP, at least in the OCs. He's pretty solid at this range. The projections love him. He'll chip in some steals. He'll play every day. And he can even move up in the lineup versus lefties. In the past, that's what Ramos has done for the Giants. The I think he was projected to hit leadoff for them until they signed Luis Arias. So that could always be another possibility for Ramos too to get more plate appearances. He's got good power. He did kind of fade last year in the second half, at least more like August, September, where he was basically empty batting average. But I still think he's relatively young still, Ramos. I think he's like 26, 27. So by no means on the downside of his career, but I think he's a great value for runs and RBIs. He won't hurt you in power, like I said. He's gonna have a decent average and chip in some steals. So he's just like a well-rounded player at this point in the draft that I'll definitely be targeting.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on here, man. I have a tweet that went out a few weeks ago where I was finishing up my output rankings. And I was going through guys that I hadn't really done much diving into, and Ramos is one of those guys. And I very vividly remember going to his Fangraphs page, looking at his numbers, going, why is this guy going so freaking late? Like, what's the problem here? Like, it was, I think it's because the park. I think people are afraid of San Francisco, but his power metrics are all good enough that his power can play in San Francisco, and we've seen it already. And so I'm not worried about the park. He's not like he's the kind of guy that. Only relies on lift and only relies on barrel or something like that. He has multiple power metrics for you to agree with it. The hit tool is good for what you need him to be. The Giant lineup is a little underrated. I think there's good RBI and run potential there in San Francisco. So I very much I love Ramos. I very vividly remember just being like, oh man, like that guy is freaking awesome, and people are not catching on at all. And so I very much am in on him. Same guy, another guy, kind of in the same boat in terms of someone who maybe this is recently biased because I just recently went through their names, but Ramon Laureano is the guy who has shed the. He was kind of a weak side platoon for 2024, maybe a little bit 2023, and just kind of finally figured it all out and looks really good. He's going to get the opportunity, obviously, in San Diego after they brought him in. He has all the power metrics that you need from him. He's going to play every day. I just he just has everything that you're looking for in a guy like that. And I've just totally lost the Fangraphs page that I had up for him because I did not write anything down. But yeah, no, I remember very vividly that these numbers are really nice. And so, if I can't get this pulled up within the next 10 seconds, I'll just pass it over to you. So I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. But 'cause I'm trying to remember how good I can't remember what the hit tool numbers were like. And if I remember correctly, they're pretty solid. But even if they're not, they should be good enough for the type of power metric that he's providing, which I thought coming up. Anyway, so let me pass over to you real quick. What are your thoughts on Laureano?
I have him right here, Paul, so don't worry. So his
Okay.
EV was 90 miles per hour, 90.3. His barrel rate was almost 14%. His hard hit was 48.8%. His XBA was 270. Xlug was
Mm,
518. XWOBA 362. And he even pulls it in the air a lot, over 21% pull air rate, which is very good. So yeah, Laureano had great metrics. Uh, I think I've drafted him once so far. He's one of the guys I think is a good value in this range. The only thing that I hesitate with is that he's been so injury prone in his career. He even had a PED suspension way back when. Um,
he
so
did. Yeah.
so at least we're not paying too much of a premium for his career year. You could probably argue it as
Mm,
a re-breakout, or probably it might be his
mm,
best year, honestly, because he had a rough time staying healthy for all those years. Oriano did so. Yeah, I think I'd be more willing to take him in a fab league because if he does get hurt again, then and if you don't have an IL
mm.
spot, you always drop him at this price. But that's why I was a little cautious in my draft and holds. But now that it's going to be fab season for me, I'll be more likely to take a gamble on Laureano, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and the hit tool saw a 74% overall contact rate. You mentioned the power numbers were there as well. So there really is an outside of the playing time, the injury issue that you brought up. There's not a whole lot to dislike here, especially at this price. He's what, your fourth or fifth outfielder in a five outfield setup. You're not paying him as like a second overall outfielder, maybe a back end number three at worst in a 15 team league in those TGFBI leagues. So it's not like you're paying a whole lot here. And so, and my draft rankings, I come from a 12 team world, and 12 team waiver wires are always fruitful. And so I'm a little more aggressive with these guys in my ranks because I can be, because those are the kind of leagues I'm looking at. So, maybe in a draft and hold, maybe I might be a little more scared. Maybe in a 15 team league, if I'm my third outfielder, I'm going to be a little more safety. But if I'm kind of late on outfielders and I need a fourth and fifth one, and he's there around this draft price. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in 100%. I just love what we've seen from him. And yeah, and the team context is there. San Diego's a pretty solid lineup. It's not great, but I think it's good enough to give you the kind of stats you need. So yeah, let's move on to who your fade is in this range.
Yeah, so I actually it was kind of tough to pick because there's a couple more guys in this range that I'm kind of been avoiding. So I ended up settling on Mickey Moniak. Yeah,
Mhm.
he had a great year, kind of like a breakout last year. But for me, it's just really two things. It's you kind of have to play him only in cores and only versus righties. And at
Yeah.
this point in the draft, in my 15 teamers, I don't want that much of a platoon and a situational start as my outfielder four. If he's my five,
Mhm.
I don't maybe, but I'd rather take Kerry
Mhm.
Carpenter, who I just have to worry about versus lefties, who's right above him in ADP, I believe. So yeah, Moniak, it's just he makes more sense probably in like a daily league with relatively deeper benches, or even. So I play on Yahoo for my home league, and it's that kind of setup where you can switch guys in and out each day. He probably makes more sense there because the upside is really high when he is in course versus righty. But in like the NFBC leagues where I predominantly play, Moniak, it's just too situational for me to want to deal with that. So I'm just looking elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I believe I have him below his ADP on the Williamson 300. I have the same concerns. He's a platoon bat, potentially only a course play. And you know what, man? Even in course, this isn't a great lineup, and so it's not like he can Bowie his like a playing time of like being able to accumulate stats because he's one not playing every day and not playing on a good lineup. And so like if he played every day and was able to accumulate and get some runs and RBIs to try and make up for what his other shortcomings maybe, but he doesn't play every day, and I can't I don't want that on my squad. And so I'm very much I'm with you on Moniak, and then I'm also fading the other Colorado outfielder Jordan Beck. There are just so many things about Beck that I can't. First, his bat FIP last year was 351. I think that that's going to regress some. I think he's another guy who's probably just going to be a cores only kind of dude. I don't like the let's see here. We just now saw the ground ball rate get back down after going from AAA at 46% in the minor leagues, or last year's major league number down to 50% in AAA before going to 43.2% in the majors. I kind of question that. I got to see that happen again. And then the hit tool isn't all that great. Yeah, the overall contact rate was 79.7, but it's still 13.7% swing and strike rate as an aggressive swinger with the end zone contact rate of only 79.7%. So he's not making a lot of contact in the zone to begin with. And so those are kind of red flags for me there because he's swinging and missing a lot. He's not making a ton of contact in the zone, and also just the 38% hard hit rate. So he's not really hitting the ball that hard. 87.4 on the average exit velocity. Line goes only 12.8 degrees, and so there's a lot of just kind of meh coming out of Jordan Beck. A lot of okay, but not someone that I want to draft at this price. So I can't. And also the team context isn't there for him as well. So even though he might not be a platoon, he might be playing more often than Moniak. It's not a great team context for him to be able to accumulate. Where are you at on Beck?
I think it's our first semi disagreement, which is fine. You can't agree on
Hey,
everybody.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
I think I have Beck on 2, maybe 3 teams, and really what it comes down to is at this point so I'm someone who I don't target steals like, I don't make a point to get my steals early in drafts, like, I'll take someone like, Brent Rooker or, like, a power hitting third baseman early on or a first baseman just because of the I think RBIs runs average well, everyone talks about average, but, like, RBIs runs are very overlooked, I think. So having someone who's gonna just crush in those categories early on is very important to me. And sometimes it means I'm short in steals. And Beck is I think there's a great shot he goes 2020 at this price, which is hard to come by. I think he was 16-19 last year, and he was only 24. I think he's a relatively good prospect as well. But I'm not going to ignore the contact issues that you brought up because his K rate was kind of high. Beck's it was almost 30%. Overall contact was just above 70, which isn't very good, especially when you talked about in the zone. But he is in cores though, and cores can elevate the BABIP. We've seen it for years with plenty of hitters. And unlike Moniak, Beck will play versus lefties. He's right-handed, but there's no platoon issue, so he's going to play more than Moniak will, and he steals unlike Moniak. So that's why I set the two apart, and there's like mid-teen power potential with Beck because his barrel rate was almost 10%, which is I think slightly above average. I don't have the average showing for the league, but it's a fine barrel rate. And I think like even with Ezekiel Tovar, so I'm kind of back in on him. Same thing though, not the best play discipline for either Beck or Profar, but cores can mask so many issues, and you can, especially like more in a DC where you have hopefully more bench options at outfield. You can sit back on the road. Um, I think he was still relatively productive on the road last year. Maybe the average wasn't, but if he's still hitting homers and stealing, then okay, maybe you bite the bullet a little bit with the average. And hopefully at this point in the draft, you have a good foundation where you can kind of take a little bit of risk with the average for Beck. But it's for me, I think the 2020 is appealing at this point in the draft. So that's why I'm a little more willing to take him, I think.
Yeah, no, and look, the steals I do get. I agree with you on the steals. I think he can get to 20 steals. The success rate wasn't all that great, but the Rockies are going to be an offense that just has to squeeze some type of productivity somehow. And so I think they're going to be a lot more liberal there. So I'm with you on the steals. I I'm trying to make it a point this year whenever I'm doing my drafts. I'm trying to find guys that have good end zone contact. I gotta have guys because that's where I feel like maybe I'm putting too much weight into it. But I need someone if I'm going to trust him to get the 20 steals. I got to trust him to make enough contact, especially considering the kind of mediocre Statcast numbers we got coming from Jordan Beck. Yes, he is young, so he might grow into it. And he did. He was a good prospect. And so he is kind of on the list of players that I'm watching for next year. I got a list of guys that I just got to see them do it again before I draft them where they're being drafted, or even higher next year. If he does end up hitting 2020 with a good average again this year, then I will have to revisit this. But as of right now, I can't super buy into it. If I remember correctly, I believe my ranking in the Williams 300 is very close to his ADP, so it's not like an amazing total fade for me because this is another range of names that I kind of see some value in a lot of these names here. But for me, Beck, I would have him. I would draft Beck. Below Carpenter and below Trent Grisham. Iffy on Stanton or not, who's another guy on this range in the outfield. But I would take Grisham and Carpenter over Beck. And so that's why I have him listed as a fade here. And Stanton would be my other fade just because of the elbows. He just at any point he could just have a 15-day IL stint here and there a lot because he's just taking on too much pain. It stands my other fade here. But for me, not Beck's not my cup of tea this year.
Justin, Mason would be proud to hear you say that about the end zone contact. Anyone listens to Sleep in the Bus, they know how much Justin loves end zone contact.
I mean, it's a stat that I didn't really. I was just looking at contact rate. What's contact rate? What's swing and strike rate? And then it kind of dawned on me, like, I mean, if they're making contact, cool, but like if they're making a lot of crap contact, not the part of the zone you want them making contact at, then what's the point? Not everyone,
Right.
it can be Vlad Guerrero, just can hit anything thrown anywhere. So it's that's why I'm in on Michael Harris. He's a great end zone contact rate last year, 90% plus, and so I love Michael Harris this year. Anyways, went on a tangent. Any additional thoughts before we move on to our deep league sleepers?
No, we can move on.
Cool. Right on. So these are going to be names that are currently beyond the 60th outfielder taken an ADP. Guys that are being we think are underdrafted right now. So Ben, go ahead and start off. Who's your of the list you have here? Who's your favorite sleeper?
My favorite is probably the one I have first, and that's Justin Crawford. So
Ah,
yeah, he was who I had in mind when I was saying I would just wait on drafting someone like Caballero and just go for Justin Crawford, who hopefully will have the job the entire year. It definitely has more power upside, I think, than Caballero does. And even though Crawford is going to hit ninth and probably be in a platoon for the Phillies, I just think I've heard good things about him from people that know prospects better than I do, and getting someone who could maybe steal 30 steals close to pick 300, and play hopefully the entire year. It's kind of hard to pass up.
yeah, no, I love Justin Crawford. I stuck him onto the back end of my Williamson 300 because you gotta love the potential there. You gotta love what you're getting. The draft price potential that you're getting here. The value, the potential that you have. The return on investment is a word I'm rambling and trying to remember. The return on investment here for Justin Crawford is incredible. He's somebody you don't gotta pay a premium draft price on. He's someone that can really explode, and he has the job. That's the thing. We got a lot of young guys going. Connor Griffin going really early. You don't even know if he's going to be on the opening day roster. Justin Crawford is going to be starting at center field for the Phillies. They've told you that from, I want to say they came out in like January and said that. And so he's got the job, and that's what I love most about Justin Crawford is you're going to have prospects that have so much potential for days, but if they don't got the job, then what's the point? And so I love the Justin Crawford pick, man. I think he's got loads of potential. I love it. So we'll move on to my target here, and that's Ryan O'Hearn. This is a little bit of a cheat one for me because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm fading first base. And so I found myself getting Ryan Hearn in a lot of mock drafts and even my real drafts. I got him, just because I'm fading first base and he can double up as my fifth outfielder. Yeah, absolutely. Pittsburgh's ballpark is not great for homers or anything, but it's good for doubles. And Ryan O'Hearn has gap power like crazy, and it's a really good. He's going to be batting third or fourth, and that Pittsburgh lineup that I mentioned earlier is going to be better than what it has been. So I think he's going to be a good accumulator of RBIs. He's not a platoon. He beat the platoon last year. His numbers against lefties were not bad. They were pretty solid. And so he's not someone he's going to play most of the day. I'm not worried about Marcell Ozuna because O'Hearn is going to be able to take over that corner outfield spot for them. So he's going to play every day, going to be able to accumulate RBIs, have a good batting average. Batting average, I think, is overlooked a lot here. It's especially for me. I like to kind of go after the sexier guys like Willie Adames and Saya Suzuki that don't have the greatest batting average, but will give you tons of homers and counting stats. And so, getting someone like Ryan O'Hearn really helps me in that department. He's a personal target of mine because of the way I draft, but also I think the draft price is chef's kiss. I love it. What are your thoughts on O'Hearn?
Yeah, I haven't taken O'Hearn yet, I don't think, but it's not because I don't like him at all. Yeah, you mentioned the first base outfield's great at this point in the draft. And yeah, he's gonna should play heart of the bat heart of the lineup for the Pirates, like you said. It seems like he might be free of the platoon, so he definitely kicked it last year. I think there's maybe a little risk still, but at this point, it's fine though. Even if he does sit versus a couple lefties here and there, so yeah, nothing wrong with O'Hearn. I think he'd be like a great first bench bat, or if you really wait on outfield or corner, be a CI or outfield five.
Yeah, exactly. He's perfect guy there at the end to kind of interchange your CI, your outfield spot, first base spot. Especially like I said, I'm fading first base. I generally, I'm probably not going to be unless like somebody major falls to me. I'm not taking a lot of the early first baseman, and so I'm generally waiting. If I start at first base in the mid 100s with like a Yandy Diaz, and then later about maybe about 50, 60 picks later, I'm taking a Ryan O'Hearn as my fourth or fifth outfielder to double up with that corner infield spot with Yandy Diaz. That's great. I love that kind of start. And so I'm very much, it is kind of a specific draft strategy of mine. I don't always do it every single draft, but it's one of my favorite ones. And Ryan O'Hearn allows you to do that. I'm willing to reach on him. I really am. I'm really willing to jump up to snag him to make sure that I can, complete my lineup. Who's your next sleeper pick here?
Yeah, I put Cedric Mullins down, and Um, I think a lot of this is because of the batting average, and yeah, it was not good last year for Mullins. It was low 200s. But so if anyone's heard me talk before on Bench with Bubba, we do a lot of projection based shows, and you probably know that I use projections a lot in my prep and even when I'm drafting. And Mullins is like one of the last 15, 20 guys that you can draft that projects for those homers and steals totals. And hopefully I've done a good enough job with my average at this point where I can take a not a full, like he's not going to get 650 plate appearances, Mullins, where he's going to really drain your average of if he hits 220 or whatever. He's probably more like 550 because there's a chance he sits versus some tough lefties. I think the Rays are going to play him most of the time, which is actually good for those steals and homers that I'm looking for at this point in the draft. Yeah, even Roster Resource projects Mullins to be a full time player because I think they're going to value his defense and center. So that's going to help him stay in the lineup all the time. Even though you may not want the average in there all the time, but yeah, I don't know. It's mainly because he's so fly ball heavy now, and it's not even like the carry's that bad for Mullins. So maybe I don't know. Maybe he gets a little lucky with the BABIP and hits a few more line drives. Big ask, but it's all right. I'm here for the power and the speed, and I think kind of same range as Crawford. Here again, I'm looking for steals, and at least so we mentioned with Crawford, but he's good in average, and then Mullins comes with the power too. So I guess if you need more homers and steals, go for Mullins. If you need steals and average, go for Crawford. I think they're pretty interchangeable at this point in the draft.
Yeah, the fly ball rate, as you mentioned, is going to be both kind of a double-edged sword here. It's going to allow him to play a little bit higher on the power. We're going to sacrifice the average. But like you said, hopefully you've solidified your average at this point, depending on how you drafted. And someone like Cedric Mullins can help you fortify that power and speed department. And so Mullins is someone who, like, I wouldn't mind at this current draft price. I think he's something like around 280 or something like that, 290, if I can remember correctly. He's at that point in the draft where you're just fixing, you're drafting to fit the way you drafted already, or you're just targeting the guys you really like. And Cedric Mullins definitely fits the former on that. If you're looking for power and speed, and you're at this late in the draft and not necessarily growing on trees. And so Mullins can definitely fit that bill. And to my surprise, his swing and strike rate has been really good. He's got a really good hit tool. And so he has a path to have a batting average that's at least respectable, because he didn't have a 19% line drive rate, which isn't great, but again, gives you kind of a path to him potentially batting something like 230 or 240 again, which isn't great, but you know what? That's not going to tank you. That's not going to hurt you. And so you can get those power and speed numbers without it tanking your average. I think with Mullins, you're just hoping he can get to like 230 and you're golden. And so I think there is a path here. I don't know why I thought his hit tool was worse than that. I just had it in my mind that where I was going to see like 15% on the swing and start rate or something like that. But nah, it's been consistently under 10%. And so that's I don't know why it surprised me so much, but it does. And I think that's good for the potential to at least not hurt you. So
Yep.
any more on Mullins?
Nope.
Right on, right on. So let's see here. Mine target here is Dominic Canzone. I love this guy. He's going. I know he's going outside the pick 300. He's someone that I remember last year when he first called up. I was like, all right, well, can he solve the hit tool? Can he get the strikeouts under control? And he did. And you know what? It worked out really well for him. He has really, really good quality contact numbers. He kind of always has. He's always been kind of that prospect. You kind of go, oh, well, can they get the hit tool figured out? He's going to be really good. And lo and behold, he got the hit tool figured out. And so, yeah, he's probably going to be a platoon in Seattle. I'll give you that. But at this draft price, you're drafting from Platoonsville anyways, right? You're having these are a lot of the options you have to consider at this draft price as someone who's probably going to be your maybe last fifth outfielder, sixth outfielder, first outfielder off your bench kind of guy. I'm all in on him at that draft price. So he got that strikeout rate down to 22% last year. He continued to have really good hitting metrics, 14.5 on the barrel, 50% on the hard hit, 92 miles per hour on the exit velocity. You love all that. And then the hit tool to go off of it, the swinging strike rate dropped to 12%. Overall contact, 75.5%. End zone contact, there we go, 84.2%. Yeah, small sample size, first time he's ever really done it. But he did what we asked him to do. And when you have the quality contact that he already has, even a regression down to like the low 70s on the overall contact rate, maybe getting up to 14% on the swing and strike rate. If he can keep that barrel rate and the hard hit rate where it is, that'll play. That'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely will. Yeah, Canzone's definitely been one. He's definitely a very popular sleeper, so you're not alone in picking him. Um,
Mhm.
the only thing that's held me back in my DCs where you draft someone, you're stuck with them all year is that Canzone's gonna be 28, so he's like, and he hasn't really his career high in play appearances was last year 268. So it's just
Mhm.
like he has the tools. It doesn't matter if can he put it together for the entire year, which is something I'm much more willing to take a risk on at this price in a fab league. So yeah, there's no harm in taking a chance on him here.
Yes, yes, and if I remember correctly, I had a shot to get him in an NFBC 50, and I'm pretty sure I passed on him for that very reason. I was like, this were probably maybe, but you know what, man, a 12-team outfield fob league toward the very end of the draft, I need some outfield help. I'm taking him,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be very happy because I mean, I'm in a 16-team dynasty league, and I was shocked that he was someone's drop at the end of the year last year. After he broke out and did what he did, so I was able to scoop him right up, and so I'm very excited about that. So I'm very much in on Mr. Canzone. Obviously, picking him as a sleeper here. Let's see here. We're just a little over an hour, man. So we'd probably be able to get through most of these. Who's your next target?
I went with Jesus Sanchez, who was recently traded to the Blue Jays. Um, I I was at first I was a little upset when he got traded from the Astros. I felt like that was a better team context, but then the Blue Jays did make it to the World Series, and they probably have a deeper lineup than the Astros do now that I'm thinking about it. So it's probably a good thing for Sanchez's value. He's in a platoon still, which I was always fine with though. Um, Sanchez last year, he kind of disappointed because I think he was going closer to pick 200, if I recall correctly, and but he still had an
Mhm.
11% barrel rate, 91.3% hard hit. His XBA was 242, which if that like actually comes to fruition with his actual average, it's not going to hurt you at this point in the draft. And the one thing that kind of came out of nowhere with Sanchez is that he started stealing bases in 2024. He had 16 and then he had 13 last year. So kind of the same thing as my previous two picks. He's got at least Sanchez has the best power of Mullins and Crawford, I would say, projecting forward, but he also has the speed that the other guys too, just not to the same degree. And he's a platoon, like you said with Canzone at this point in the draft. It's all platoon outfielders really. So I think at the discounted price, I've taken a couple stabs at Sanchez already, and I will continue to do so in my fab leagues.
Yeah, last year he was someone who was perpetually 10% or under rostered on Yahoo. And that just surprised me, especially right before the trade of the Astros. He was killing it in Miami. I really just think that he got to Houston and it wasn't the kind of I don't want to say laid back environment. I didn't care in Miami, but the pressure to win wasn't there. He came to Houston and was just like, oh shit, we gotta he pressed a little bit. So I believe in Jesus Sanchez. I believe in the talent. Anybody who listens to the podcast knows this. I beat the Jose Jesus Sanchez jump all the time. I beat it last year. I beat it especially after the trade to Houston last year. I really thought when he got traded to Houston, I'm an Astros fan. And when he got traded to Houston, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, I remember texting my sister because I know she goes to a lot of Astros games going, hey, you're gonna love this dude named Jesus Sanchez. He's gonna be so good. He's gonna oh my god, just wait. And then he just completely crapped the bed. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. But you know what, man? He has about a year and a half of producing really good metrics. So I think we can chalk up that second half to being a bit of an outlier, a small sample, a negative that I think we can safely gloss over, especially since his draft price didn't inflate at all. In fact, it went down. He's cheaper than he was last year. And you know what? He's healthy. He's going to play in Toronto. That was kind of a question mark in Houston. He wasn't like guaranteed a spot, but he's going to start in Toronto. So you can safely draft him now. Jesus Sanchez, absolutely, people who know me, people who read my stuff know how much I've always loved Sanchez. Anything else on Sanchez before I move on to the next target?
Nope, we covered him pretty good.
Gotcha. One of my sleepers here is Cam Smith. Thing here as well. But I got a feeling we were just a year ahead on him last year. I mean, he got so much helium last year toward the end of draft season, going after the traded Kyle Tucker for him. But he had flashes last year where he was incredible. Like he was just wildly inconsistent. I remember last year there were times where I was picking him up and dropping him based on how well he was doing at that moment in my daily change leagues. He was someone who was like, all right, he's hot right now, I'm taking him. And then once he started to cool off, he dropped him. And I just think that now is going to be the year that he's going to be able to take that next step. The overall StatCast numbers weren't beautiful. Just to 7% of the barrel, 40.8% on the hard hit. Let's see here. The batted ball, you like the fact that he wasn't a terrible ground ball number, 45% with a good line drive rate. He was if he can start to the whole adage, turn that line drive into some more fly balls, get some more power. And look, let's not forget what what they traded him for. They traded Kyle Tucker for him. So there is talent here. There's talent for you to buy into by itself at this draft price. But look, we'll go and take a look at that it's not lovely, 82.8% on the end zone contact rate from last year. Was solid. It's not great or anything, but that's something you can work with. A 73.8% overall contact rate. So just a decent enough contact rate here for him to build upon. It's again not something that's like super awesome, but I think those numbers are good enough for him to improve upon. It's not like we're working with like a 65% contact rate. Now, I'm not working with like a 78% end zone contact rate. We're not playing with a low 30% hard hit rate. He's right around league average in a lot of these numbers. And now we're just looking for him to take the next step. And I think at this draft price, it's a well worth the risk.
Yeah, I think so. He's someone I moved up in my rankings when I switched from my DC mindset to my fab mindset.
Hmm.
And the big thing, I mean, and you're well aware this, we're well aware of this as an Astros fan, is how bad the outfield is for the Astros right now. Though I want to rub it in, but it's Will Perfitto's projected to be out there. Zach Cole
Mhm.
and Jake Myers. I know they like Jake Myers' defense, and he's a decent hitter. But Will Perfitto didn't really show a lot with the Blue Jays, and then Zach Cole strikes out like every other at bat. So
Yeah.
there's definitely plenty of options for Cam Smith to become a starter, and so I would just look at his spring. I actually pulled up his spring training stats as you were talking to see what he's done so far, Cam Smith, and he's got 10 at bats. He's kind of in line with the other outfielders I mentioned. So there's a chance
Yeah.
he could end up being a starter. And Just so I would just keep a lookout for listeners of how he does in the spring.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. He's going to have to turn in a pretty good spring in order to make the squad. But I think that the fact that they traded Kyle Tucker for him gives him
Yes.
that inroad, right? You know, it's like he's the guy they want to win the job. He's the one they want to have out there because they did give up so much for him. But you know, and I think that if he takes that job, he has a chance to run with it. He's just a great guy too. He's just all reports are he's just a great dude, and I know that doesn't mean much for fantasy, but you know, they're the kind of guy you want to root for. You know, he's just kind of guy that you really want to see succeed. And so I want to watch him succeed on my fantasy teams. And so very much love me some Cam Smith. Got to go with that homer pick right there. Who is your next sleeper?
I went with someone who I can't quit. I try not to have guys where I can't quit. I kind of try to be objective with the stats, but I'm always going back to Jake McCarthy, and it's really because he signed with the Rockies. Because I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times there was a joke on because when I would record with Bubba when we do the Fab shows, we could talk about our ads, and I couldn't tell you how many times I added and dropped McCarthy across my 4 Fab leagues in the MSBC last year. He was like whenever he
Mhm.
would get called up, I'd add him back because I think it was like 2 years ago, or I don't know, it was last year, but he was getting picked around pick 200 for the average and speed that I was kind of hoping for,
Mhm.
like hoping for Justin Crawford. But then McCarthy he has some bad luck, and at least now with the Rockies, he's projected to hit leadoff for them. He would be in a platoon, which is still fine though at this point in the draft. But he has even more so now in cores the potential to be a huge average contributor, and he has 30 steal speed, and he can hit 10 homers. So at this point in the draft, I think McCarthy's a great flyer to with no downside. You can just drop him if he doesn't hit again.
Yeah, man. I remember last year I was the same way with McCarthy. I picked him up, I dropped him, picked him up, I dropped him. You know, he's someone that like I picked up in that dynasty league I mentioned. I think in 2020 three or 2024, he got a really nice solid run in Arizona. Let's see here. Yeah, in 2024 he batted 285, had 25 homers. That was his third straight season with 23 plus steals. I said homers, steals. You know, in those previous seasons, he got 312, 354 plate appearances. So you know the steals potential is there. Like I mentioned earlier with, I believe we're talking about Beck. You know, the steals will be there because the Rockies are going to have to find a way to get something out of their offense, and being active on the base pass will naturally be it. Let's see here. What was his line drive rate? I believe, yeah, he has a man, that 13% line drive rate just reeks of outlier, man. The dude was consistently 20% plus, and that plays beautifully in cores, that spacious outfield. And so you got to feel like he's got that line drive rate's going to normalize back to 20% range. And in course field, that's wonderful. And I don't think it's I think it's a I think Tyler Friedman might be his, or is Freeman still in Colorado? I can't remember.
I think he's on
But
the bench right now per roster resource.
yeah, like he's not much of a competition. I think Jake McCarthy is someone who I think that line drive has got to get better. It's just there's no way he's a 13.8% line drive hitter. He's just not. And he has all those seasons of 23 plus steals. Should get to at least 500 plate appearances, which makes him a threat to steal 30 bases. And at this draft price, man, that's wonderful to get someone who can get the 30 steals this late in the draft. Like hell yeah, like sign me up. And so yeah, no, I love me some Jake McCarthy. I know he's available in that dynasty league. So I might go look to pick him up after this podcast. The more I talk about it, I think I might actually go pick him up. So you know, we'll see who I have to drop though. I can't remember. Anyways, but yeah, no, I think I might go pick him up. So my sleeper at this range is going to be Jeff McNeil. And man, I just think he landed in such a wonderful spot with the Athletics going to Sacramento. That little minor league ballpark there is going to play real well with his ability to lift and pull the ball, man. Like if you get a guy that can lift and pull in a small ass ballpark like that, you know, that's going to be wonderful. So the launch angle last year, or just for his career, is 13.9 degrees, multiple campaigns of at least 14 degrees on the launch angle. Pull rate got up to 49.7% last year. Previous seasons before that was 44 and 42, or 41.3, sorry. So, you know, he still has a consistent ability to get some pull at least to go with some decent lift. So that right there is going to give him a nice power floor of 15 to 20 homers, which I think he can hit more than that. Batting in an athletic lineup that is just really, really solid, like really good lineup out there for the Athletics. And so you got really good counting stat opportunities for him. He might be a platoon. I'm not sure. Is he even a lefty?
He's
Let's see.
left-handed.
Yeah, yeah. So you might be a platoon, but like we mentioned multiple times, it doesn't matter at this point in the draft. You're just looking for depth. You're just looking for someone to give you a little pop, a little push toward the end here. Really good swing and strike race. The hit tool is all there for him. He's relatively healthy these campaigns. With the Mets, 470, 460 plate appearances. Because I don't know if he lost time because of the platoon or because of injuries. I'm pretty sure he was hurt a couple times last year, but not like overly concerned about the injuries, considering 450 plus plate appearances, 2 straight campaigns. Before that, 500, 600 plate appearances. So I'm not overly concerned about the playing time issue. And second base outfield eligibility, that's wonderful as well. Even in a fob league, have that type of bench options to be able to plug in to one second base, as shallow as it is. That's you got to love that. And then you've someone you can plug in at the end of your outfield as well. Yeah, I love me some Jeff McNeil this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so roster resources doesn't think he's gonna be in a platoon McNeil. So that's a point in your favor. And then I mentioned earlier with I forget who it was, but the percentage of plate appearances versus righties, McNeil is in the full time range that I consider based on last year's his playing time. So I think the full time is safe for now at least. And the one thing I'll add before we move on, kind of in line with your pull stat, was that his pulled air McNeil's was
Mhm.
27% roughly, and the average is like 18%. So he was well above average in that. And that's so despite his very subpar 5% barrel rate, if he's pulling it in the air like that in that ballpark, there's a good chance he's hitting 20 homers with an average that won't hurt you. So I think he's a good flyer.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I can't find pull air on Fangraphs. And my Savant for some reason is glitches hardcore on my laptop. So I just do. So I've been going to launch Eagle combined with pull rate on mine. So it's good to see that lines up with the pull air rate. That was I knew it was elite. I just didn't know what the specific number was. So yeah, I love that. I appreciate that right there. All right, man. Moving on to your last sleeper, who you got?
A little bit of a homer pick here, and it could be completely useless, but it's more like a name to watch. And if Giancarlo Stanton has one bad bag of potato chips that goes the wrong way, Spencer Jones could be in the Yankees lineup. And so I'm going with Spencer Jones. I think he's like 25 now, 26, and so either he's gonna play for the Yankees or they have to trade him because he's kind of shown he's shown them everything that he has to in AAA. Jones, he was almost 30-30 last year. The only thing is the strikeout rate with Jones, but he's built like Judge essentially, and he's faster though. So the K's are a concern with him, but yeah, I'm looking at last year in 116 games, Jones had 102 runs, 35 homers, 29 steals at 274. That's a pretty incredible pace in 116 games across 2 levels. That was AAA and AA, and that was his age 24 season. So he's going to be 25 now, going into 2026. Like I said, with Sand, he's already got bad elbows. Who knows if Grisham can repeat what he did last year? I'm a fan of Grisham, but I'm not going to take him all the time. There's a chance that he kind of regresses back to what he used to be. As long as Rice is at first, that's Bellinger's kind of stuck in the outfield. So it really comes down to Stan's health. I think Jones would be the 1-for-1 replacement if Stan gets hurt. Or like I said, if it doesn't happen miraculously, Stan stays healthy. Maybe the Yankees trade for a pitcher, and Jones is the centerpiece of that deal, and he gets a chance for some team in the majors. So I took him in my last DC. I took him, I think, another one before that too. So I have a couple teams with Spencer Jones. So hopefully he does get some playing time. And yeah, 30-30 bat. It's only like I said, the only issue is really the K rate. But Judge was able to overcome that. So of course Judge is like an anomaly, but it is possible for someone for it could be an issue though too. Like it could be if he's Joey Gallo though with speed, it's not the worst thing at this point in the draft or as a fab addition. So I'll just be on the lookout for Spencer Jones as the year goes on.
Yeah, I don't know what his ADP is right here. He would be someone that in a draft and hold in like the post 30 round or something, of who's someone I'd be targeting there. Just I worry about that playing time. Even if Stanton gets hurt, they brought in Paul Goldschmidt, and then you still have Jason Dominguez to worry about as well. And so
Dominguez
I
too.
don't know, if he would need a couple of injuries here, or for Dominguez to just completely crap the bed. Paul Goldschmidt never quite turn it around, then I maybe they might need an extra punch. Then bring him up sometime in June or July. Or I think it's more likely the path to playing time for him was a trade, because Yankees are always looking for pitching. They got a lot of injury prone arms, and injuries can happen to guys like Jazz Chisholm or Ryan McMahon, and can force their hand. And so he is a very nice trade chip right now for them. So injuries will have to happen to either force the Yankees' hand to trade him or to get him in the lineup. But man, you telling me that I'm in a fob league and he gets called up? Yeah, I'm gonna drop some money on him. I want him on my team, especially if it looks to be a long term thing where I want to get more than a month out of him. Then I'm going to drop some money on him, because he has so much power potential, that he can really impact your squad immediately as soon as he gets called up. But for right now, into the drafting him, I don't. It's a really long road to playing time for him, and so I don't know how aggressive I would be in drafting him. Do you agree with that in terms of the playing time outlook? That it's more
Yeah.
likely he gets traded than he plays for the Yankees, or do you think he can leapfrog someone like Jason Dominguez and Paul Goldschmidt?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the age because, like I said, Jones is going to be 25 this year, and the Dominguez already has struggled at the major league level, and he's younger than Jones. So I guess it depends on how they're doing in AAA or wherever they are at the time of need. Um, so yeah, I think they haven't given Jones a shot yet, and like they have to at this point. I feel like so. I it's I I would just like maybe like if someone's drafting like an OC right now in the 30th round, take him because at that point you're going to draft that player anyway, and maybe Sand gets hurt in the next 3 weeks or someone else gets hurt, God forbid, but you never know what's going to happen. And Jones's
Yeah.
upside is massive, so I think I was looking at the ADP and why he appeared, and someone took him at 275 in one league, as
Ah,
an OC, which is kind of funny. I don't know who must have been a big Yankee fan, but
no, I'm not doing
I
that.
would have waited to do that, but it's the right idea though. Like this, because like I remember seeing the one thing he's imitating Otani now with his swing, and of course Jones has like hit like 3 homers in 4 days or something like that. So um, it's like one of those spring training hype things is really what it is. And so last round in a draft, if it doesn't work out, he's in the minors. Fine, just drop him and add whoever's hot off the waiver wire.
Yeah, no, it's something I've talked a little bit on the podcast before. When your last picks, especially in FOB leagues, you want to draft someone who you can easily drop, someone who you're going to know pretty quickly if they're going to be good or bad. Someone like for me, like a Christian Javier, you're looking at the velocity. The velocity ain't there; you can easily drop them. So you're for me, I'm looking for those guys that have loads of upside, but someone who you can easily tell right away if you're going to keep them or drop them. And he definitely fits that mold. If he's not on the team, you can drop him. If he's and if same with like that's a standard 12-team league at the end of the draft is where I would draft someone like Connor Griffin because if he's on the team, yeah, keep him. If he's not, drop him. And so that type of thing is where, but Connor Griffin is not going to be the last pick of your draft. I'm not going to have a whole lot of shares of Griffin, if at all. And unfortunately, the same thing for Jones. Unless he really falls to, like you said, that post 30 round range of like NFBC 50s in your draft and holds, then you take those shots there, because if he does get the call up, then you're gonna reap that benefit from such a late draft price. And so, but outside of that, I don't know how much I will have Spencer Jones on my team until he gets called up. So yeah, any more on Jones before we move on?
Nope.
Right on. I got one last name on my list, and that is Mr. Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh is someone who maybe I'm just, he's a guy who I also have always loved. a guy last year who I was high on, huge, because it was, I think it was toward the beginning of spring training last year that the Phillies came out and said that he wasn't going to be a platoon, that he was going to be the guy. They were not going to platoon him. Of course, it did not work out very well, at least not until the end. The back half of last year, he really turned it around and did very, very well last year, toward the end of the year. And at this draft price, you might as well take a flyer to see if that's legit. Hopefully this year, the Phillies got rid of Castellanos. I know they still have, I think, Sosa, Rojas, those guys that can potentially platoon him. But even if he is a platoon, he's still worth it. He still hits the respectable 8.3% of the barrel, 46.2 in the hard hit, 91 on the EV. Let's see here. He continued to have a really good ground ball rate. The line drive rate was still 24%. So you love that. I wish he pulled the ball more. I'll give you that much. But you know what? He's someone who's probably not going to top out at 15 to 20 homers anyways. Going to give you some good speed. And then at the back half of last year, I know that end zone contact rate got to 90%. I can't remember what it was for the full season. I don't think it was that great of a number. I think he just figured something out, and he started to make really good contact in the zone toward the end of last year. Those second half numbers for him were incredible. They were the kind of numbers that I was expecting him to have, and he finally did it. And so at this draft price, man, someone who is going to be a flyer at the end of your draft, has really good power and speed potential. Yeah, there it is. Oh, wow, I was wrong. 88% end zone contact rate last year, 78% overall contact rate, which is 4 percentage points higher than what we saw in 2024. I think he's just a guy that just has all kinds of potential to hit the crap out of ball, all kinds of potential to hit the ball a lot with a good contact rate. And with the speed abilities, a good line drive rate is going to be a good batting average asset potentially as well. And you know what? They're going to play him. They need him this year, and they did not bring in anybody to really take his job. You got Justin Crawford's going to be in center. He's going to be one of the corner outfielder spots with Adolis Garcia. And there's your Philadelphia Phillies outfield, y'all. And I'm going to be getting shares of Brandon Marsh for the end of my drafts this year for sure. What are your thoughts on Mr. Marsh?
All right. So one of the great things about the NFBC is that it has the player shares page. So I'm going to name you my top 4 outfielders behind Jake Fraley. So I've done 8 leagues, and then Jake Fraley's he's a late DC pick. So I have 4 outfielders I have on 3 of my 8 teams: Justin Crawford, Ian Happ, Jordan Beck. So I'm telling the truth here when I'm talking about who my targets are today. My 4th guy is Brandon Marsh. So I've been a big fan of Brandon Marsh in drafts. Looking at how he had 19 steals 2 years ago. What did I say about the other guys? They all have steal potential. They're going late. Marsh hit the middle line for the Phillies. McKay came down last year, so and I think there was some talk about them not platooning him, but he's projected to be in the platoon right now. He's kind of at that threshold with the 80% I was talking about earlier with the plate appearances versus left versus righties. So yeah, I think Marsh is a great target. All these guys are going in the same range, at least like Marsh, Mullins, and Crawford. So it's kind of like pick your poison. And I'll obviously I've doubled up on some of those guys. I've double tapped them because I have not 8 teams, and I have a total of those guys 9 times that are all going in the same range. So I have teams with both those guys. So I think they're all good targets. And Marsh is he could be my favorite because I think because he has the track record like Mullins does too, but at least Marsh isn't going to tank your average. So I prefer Marsh to Mullins probably. They have a similar profile, and yeah, so I think Marsh is a great target.
Yeah, man, I love me some Brandon Marsh. I know I have him on that dynasty league I mentioned earlier. I'm looking forward to drafting him in my leagues coming up. I'm in the middle of one NFBC 50, my TGFBI. I'm going to start the fantasy 6-pack league start tomorrow, and I plan on being in at least 3 more OCs, plus my Yahoos, plus the Sports Ethos internal league, plus the invitational, which wink, wink, going to be part of the invitation. Let me know, Ben. We'll get you in. So I've got multiple opportunities and multiple drafts for me to be able to get a lot of Brandon Marsh and I look forward to doing it. Him and Canzone, I think are of the names that I mentioned here. Those two are probably my favorites, along with Jeff McNeil. Those are probably my three favorite ones. And then of course, y'all know my love for Cam Smith and Brian O'Hearn as well. So anyways, Ben, any more anything you want to add on before we wrap this thing up?
No, I'm all set. I think we covered a good amount of players.
Awesome, awesome, man. Well, man, Ben, I definitely appreciate you being on. You want to tell the people one more time where to find you?
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me on. It's good to finally chat with you. Yeah, so like we said earlier, primarily catch me on Bench with Bubba podcast. Most weeks I should be on there pretty regularly in the regular season, but Bubba and I were actually going to record last night. Something came up, so we weren't able to. But I'm sure I'll be on a time or two before the season kicks off. And then if you are not, well, if you are a member of the Bubba the Bloom Patreon for Bench with Bubba and the Bloom, Bubba's got so many shows, so it's if you don't know who Bubba is, then you gotta change that because Bubba's great. So I'm helping out with their draft kit on their Patreon, handful of articles that have come out so far, and I'm trying to be pretty active in their Discord. So and I sometimes I tweet every now and then, but not I never was a big tweeter, but even less so now.
Now, I totally get it. There's a bit of a cesspool now, so I get it. I wished baseball writers would just move the Bluesky, all of them, or something like that, just so I don't have to be on Twitter anymore. Because I just feel like I have to be in order to get all the news that's happening there. But yeah, no, I believe that's a quick end of podcast note here. I've mentioned this before, but I love to make this point. Follow beat writers. Read what the beat writers are saying in spring training. Those are the guys that are most in tune to what's happening in spring training. I would take their word over any fantasy analyst when it comes to playing time, when it comes to who they think is going to start, who they think is going to be the closer, who they think is going to bat and where in the lineup. They're the ones that I put the most weight into when it comes to those type of questions. And so make sure you're following those beat writers and make sure you're paying attention to the Speed Sports Ethos blurb feed. We'll be breaking it all down for you for free there. And so just make sure you're doing that to stay on top of the free agency news, the spring training news, because those are the guys you really want to be paying attention to. Don't listen to our speculation. What is Chris Cantillo saying about the Red Sox? What is Yes Network saying about the Yankees? What are Brian McTaggart for the Astros saying? Those are the guys you want to listen to. So anyways, with that, we'll end this, man. Thank you so much, Ben, being on with us. Like you said, Bubba and the Bloom, the draft kit there. Make sure you check that out. Ben Tidd is someone who you want to listen to. He got third place in the 2022 NFBC main event. The dude knows what he's talking about. So make sure you check out his stuff. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at PaulW_34 to get more of me. Ask me questions, hit me up. Let's get ready for 2026. Same thing on Blue Sky with no underscore over there. Make sure you follow the Sports Ethos Fantasy Baseball accounts. Get our draft guide content. I updated my Williamson 300 yesterday. We got the draft tracker coming out. We've got all kinds of goodies for you: sleepers and busts, rankings, dynasty, redraft. We got it all for you. So make sure you check out that stuff at sportsethos.com. And please rate and subscribe to podcasts, both where you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify and all that lovely stuff, and on YouTube at the Sports Ethos YouTube channel. I'm Paul Williamson. He's Ben Tidd. This has been Fantasy MLB Today's Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. Y'all have a good one.